Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a book review on The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichec. In The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichec, the witch Agraboda has been punished by the god Odin to burn after she refuses to share with him knowledge of the future. Fleeing to the forest to heal from her injuries, Agraboda meets the trickster god Loki. What begins as distrust eventually turns to love, and together they produce 3 unusual children, each with a destiny that Agraboda is determined to keep secret from the gods. Wow, you guys, I freaking loved this book. I went into it kind of telling myself, hey, don't get overly hyped about it, because sometimes with mythological retellings, sometimes it can be a little hit or miss for me, but man, I seriously absolutely loved this. It was kind of everything I was hoping it would be, and actually kind of went beyond what I was hoping it would be, actually. And what I just loved so much about this imaginative retelling of Norse mythology is just, I think the amount of time and research that author Genevieve Gornichec went into with this book. It just feels like she kind of took her time with it and making sure everything kind of fell in place and fell in line and whatnot. Because I have read a couple different translations of Norse mythology over the last several years, and Norse mythology is very complex, you guys. I mean, like any mythology, really, but there's something about Norse mythology in particular that is just really bizarre and crazy, intense, just really all over the place sometimes. It's very, very complex mythology and just so much heavy, deep lore. Genevieve Gornichec really manages to tie all of these various different stories and threads and connections. She really ties it all quite brilliantly together into a really tight, cohesive story. Because like a lot of mythology, a lot of the stories and tales that you hear, they're what you can almost call like episodic, you know what I mean? They can read as very episodic, like here's a tale here about this particular event, or here's a tale here about this particular character, you know? And it's the same with Norse mythology as well, you know? So yeah, Genevieve Gornichec kind of manages to take away that episodic nature, and like I said, she really manages to connect all these stories and threads into just a much more tight, cohesive story, which I appreciated, and gave Norse mythology, all these threads, it gave it some sort of sense, you know, some sort of rational sense, like, okay, this is how we get from here to here to here to here, you know, by the time we get to Ragnarok. And if you know anything about Ragnarok, that's like the end of the world for the gods. So in turn, the way she does connect everything so wonderfully together, it gives this story a nice flow to it, a nice pace. Nothing ever feels too abrupt. Everything feels very natural, flows together naturally. So let's begin with some of our main characters here. The main character of this novel is Agraboda. I'm not quite sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, you guys. That's kind of how I was pronouncing it in my head, Agraboda. Agraboda in Norse mythology, from what I recall, she's kind of like just mentioned like once or twice or something like that. Like, she's barely even mentioned. And she's often cited as being the mother of 3 of Loki's children, Hel, Fenrir, and Jormungandr. So that's kind of, she's often just depicted as that, the mother of Loki's 3 monster children, pretty much. So yeah, that's what Genevieve Gornichec is doing with this novel, is it's pretty much, hey, she is so much more than just the mother of those children. And what I loved about the Agraboda character, she is a very complex, flawed woman. She is definitely not perfect by any means, because sometimes she'll do things, say things, it's like, woman, what's wrong with you? So yeah, I love her complexity. She's very fascinating and interesting. She's a woman who's a witch, and she's kind of seen as this nuisance, as this threat. And yeah, she has angered the god Odin, who in Norse mythology is like the head of the gods, pretty much. She has angered the god Odin just one too many times, and she has actually been burned on like 3 different occasions, but each time she doesn't really stay dead. She comes back each time, but it's like each time she comes back, it's like she loses more and more of herself and loses more and more of her memory. So that's kind of where we're at the start of this novel. She has gone through her 3rd punishment of burning by Odin, and yes, she wakes up and she doesn't recall anything. She doesn't recall any of her backstory or anything, and she pretty much is reinventing herself at the very start of this novel and reinventing her new history and whatnot, and yeah, her new name is Angrboda. Yeah, a lot of this book is playing into, you know, what is her backstory, what is her lore, you know. She is this witch. Was she involved in like other things in Norse mythology and whatnot? She just doesn't remember that she was involved in some of these other events. You know, like, how ancient is she? You know, you get the idea that she's possibly very, very ancient, but she kind of doesn't really know it. So yeah, it's after this 3rd burning, this 3rd punishment that she has gone through at the start of the novel, that she flees into the woods, like just a remote part of the forest, to heal from her injuries. And it's here that she meets the trickster god Loki. Yeah, guys, I think we all know Loki. I definitely really appreciated Genevieve Gornichec's, you know, kind of her take on the Loki character, because everybody kind of has their own different version of Loki, and I think a lot of people, thanks to the Marvel movies more than anything, thanks to the Marvel movies, everyone always has like Tom Hiddleston pictured as Loki. So I did appreciate that Genevieve Gornichec really tried her hardest to kind of be like, hey, I'm going to make my own Loki, I'm going to make him look a certain way, look very different from everyone's visual of Tom Hiddleston, you know. So I appreciated that her attempts in trying to be like, hey, don't think about Tom Hiddleston. So at first there is this initial distrust between Angrboda and Loki. I love their witty banter and back and forth with one another, because it's like, should we trust each other? What's going on here? And yeah, eventually that distrust turns into kind of like this mutual friendship, and then it eventually turns into a love relationship, and yeah, eventually producing the 3 unusual children of Hel, Fenrir, and Jormungandr, or Jormungand as he is referred to in this. And Angrboda and Loki have one of the most fascinating and complex relationships in this book. Angrboda has a lot of great relationships in this book in general, but yeah, I always loved all of her scenes with the Loki character in particular, because she spends the most time with him, I feel like. There's definitely a huge complexity there with them. They're kind of their shifting personalities as the years kind of go through and whatnot. And yeah, in this, Loki is definitely described as being very charming and very handsome. He has a very unique way with words, how he can spin tales, how he can spin lies and whatnot. And sometimes his way with words is a good thing, sometimes his way with words is a bad thing, and then at one very extremely pivotal point in this novel, his way with words gets him way down deep into some bad places that he should have never gone to, which gets him in massive trouble with Angrboda, that really kind of just severs their relationship at some point. So yeah, I love that complexity of their relationship, because it definitely goes through the extremes in this novel. Yeah, friendship and love down here, and then yeah, a lot of negativity and toxicity down this way. And of course, if you know Norse mythology, as I already mentioned, you know about Ragnarok, which is essentially like the end of the world for the Norse gods and whatnot. And once again, if you know anything about Norse mythology, the big thing with Ragnarok, all of the gods are heavily involved. Loki especially is a big instigator in things that happen. And yeah, Loki and Angrboda's children are big factors in Ragnarok. Hel, their daughter, being pretty much like queen of the underworld, essentially queen of the dead, her being a big part of it. Fenrir, the wolf, the big giant wolf, and who at Ragnarok devours a couple of the gods, kills several of them. And then Jormungand, who is the world serpent, who has like a big, huge, pivotal fight with Thor and whatnot during Ragnarok. So yeah, like I said, if you know Norse mythology, yeah, all of these characters, all these threads brilliantly come together. Genevieve Gornichec really just brings all this together to just come to this really great gripping, thrilling, exciting, just a head rush of excitement by the time you get to just the big, the climax of the entire end of this book and whatnot. And a lot of what this novel is about, it has to do with fate and destiny, free will in a sense. Is fate and destiny predetermined? Do we have any control in our fate and destiny? Can we prevent certain things? Or if you try to prevent something, are you only creating like a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know? So yeah, a lot of what's going on in this book is Angrboda, fairly early in the novel, she does get a vision of Ragnarok. She doesn't know that she's seeing Ragnarok at the time, but she sees Loki being involved. She sees all of her children being involved. So a big whole thing of this novel is her, like, okay, what can I prevent here? Can I find a loophole to steer away from this, or am I only making it worse, that it's going to come to be anyway no matter what I do? And everything that she does in this novel is to protect her children more than anything. She is willing to do just about anything to keep her children away from the gods. She doesn't want the gods to know that her children even exist, for starters. Yeah, she is a mother who will lay down her life for her children. As far as other characters in this novel, a good chunk of the Norse gods do make their little cameo appearances in this novel. They don't make too many appearances, but when they do provide for some of the most wildly insane and very intense chapters of this book. And yeah, the gods are pretty much seen as the villains, you know, because we are in Angrboda's point of view, and the gods have punished her just time and time again. So of course we are seeing the gods through her eyes. We are seeing them as the villains of this story. Yeah, we see them as vain and selfish and just full of pettiness and whatnot. Another main character of this novel is a female huntress named Stacie. I love the relationship between Angrboda and Stacie. It's definitely just one of the strongest female friendships in this book. That kind of drifts into a little more. That's kind of all I'll say with that relationship, because it's kind of a fun surprise with this novel where the relationship between Angrboda and Stacie kind of eventually goes. And the great thing about Stacie as a character, she lets it be known just how she's feeling. She always lets her opinions be known. She never sugarcoats anything to Angrboda. You know, if Loki is doing something stupid, Stacie will be like, hey, your husband is doing something stupid. I also loved the three children of Angrboda and Loki in this novel as well. When I first started this novel, I was kind of a little worried. I was like, oh, I feel like the children are going to be kind of sidestepped and ignored, you know, that the book would just focus on like Angrboda and Loki and other characters, and the children would kind of be pushed to the background, you know, even though they're incredibly important. But no, Genevieve Gornichec, she really managed to give the three children really great personalities and complexities and flaws and whatnot. And yeah, they are big, huge characters as well, especially the character of Hel, who is the firstborn of Loki and Angrboda's children. Like I said, Hel being, she eventually becomes like the queen of the dead and whatnot. And yeah, you know, she's born and she's a sweet little cute precocious little girl, but unfortunately she's kind of born, she's kind of almost partially dead. It's a weird thing, you guys. Norse mythology is weird and bizarre, but yeah, she's kind of born, her legs are kind of rotting and dead and whatnot, and Angrboda is doing everything in her power to kind of prevent that rot from you know, sinking in even further. But yeah, Hel is definitely a wonderful character in this, and yeah, like I said, starting off as a sweet, young, innocent little girl, and eventually kind of growing into kind of a resentful, bitter woman by the end, really angry and frustrated with her parents for some of the things that kind of fall out and happen as you get through to the end of the book and whatnot. I even liked Fenrir as a character in this. He's a cute little wolf puppy at the start. And yeah, he doesn't like speak, but like Loki and Angrboda can hear his voice in their heads and whatnot, and that was just always so cute when he would speak. And yeah, he grows into like a big, huge, vicious and crazy wolf and whatnot. I love that. And then Jormungand is kind of described as being the most simple of the children. He doesn't really speak too often, but because he kind of hisses around, like I said, because he's a snake, he kind of hisses around and slithers around, communicating very little, but it's like, you feel like he is noticing and seeing a lot, for the most part. But yeah, I loved all three the children and just that whole family dynamic presented in this book. So yeah, overall, I absolutely loved this book. It was way more than I was expecting it to be, because I was a little worried that it wasn't going to live up to the hype that I kind of had in my head for it. Once again, just all the praise to Genevieve Gornichec for really writing a compelling, gripping story, just a really great imaginative retelling of Norse mythology that came across as very believable and natural. And yeah, once again, Norse mythology, it is so complex and so just wildly bizarre, you guys. But Genevieve Gornichec, just the beauty of her writing, nothing ever feels just so bizarre. It feels almost kind of normal. You're not thinking, oh, this is weird, It's just wonderfully all done, that, like I said, beautifully natural and flows together. A really gripping, compelling story. And yeah, focusing on a character of Norse mythology, Angrboda, who, not many people are familiar with, and she's kind of dropped off at the side in Norse mythology in general. So yeah, if you love all things Norse mythology, I think you might really like this. Of course, there's the people who don't like this book. It's not going to be for everybody, but I personally really loved it. I would definitely recommend it for sure. So you guys, that is it for this video. In the comments below, have you guys read The Witch's Heart? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What are some of your favorite parts of Norse mythology? Because it has so many great, wild and crazy stories that are so fun. Just let me know down below. So that is it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.